Right. All systems go. Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa. Ni hao, jambo, marhaba, happy Father's Day. It's time for the Hermes Inquisition yet again, episode 285 on Sunday, the 18th of June, 2023. I'm Phil.
I'm Ben.
And Matt's not here tonight. He's on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
That's it. I thought he's going to have a shock when he gets there.
Yeah, just dust, just space dust. Yeah. But never fear, because tonight we're very happy to be joined by Debbie Elliott. How are you doing, Debbie?
Oh, I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
You're more than welcome.
So the clouds have just cleared.
Sorry,
I was saying there was a storm coming. The clouds have just cleared because I was saying to you just now there's a storm coming. And as your beginning started, all the clouds just went away. So the sun now shines.
It's the sun. We try our best.
The sun shines on the righteous, someone said, didn't they?
There must have been something gone wrong, though.
Oh dear, yeah, it's nice to have you. You write books. You run Hermes Risen, which is it an online magazine?
It is, yeah, with various writers that do esoteric stuff on various, from philosophy to anthroposophy to you name it, and we do book reviews, stuff on Crowley, stuff on elementals. We've all fantastic writers from, well, mostly from the UK, but we've got a few from abroad as well. So it's building up. It's only been running a couple of years.
Wow, right. Because I don't know, was it? We had Tim Wyatt on the show not so long ago, about a month or 6 weeks ago. I don't know if it was an article of his, or was it the book review? Was the review of his was it Everyone's Book of the Dead? Is it called?
That's it. Yeah, yes. Because I had him on my channel for that. I know him quite well. Yes, through the philosophy lines. And I've watched your shows with him. I think you've done 2 with him, haven't you?
No, just the one. Just the
one. Right, okay. And we also both, I think we all know Wayne Gatfield, who's the poet and has his own channel, who's also a great theosophist and talks about great things. So he writes for Hermes Risen as well. Wow. And we all do book reviews for, if someone sends us a book that's just come out, we sort of share it between us. Whoever deals with that subject gets that book to review.
Cool. So, right. So you're, right. So is it mainly books that are sent into you, or do you have like some secret sort of online area where you get all the juicy latest releases?
We're quite lucky. We know amongst us all, because there's quite a few of us, we know really good writers who will then kindly send us, or their publishers kindly send us books, which is how we manage to get all the latest on the esoteric world or on theosophy or Gurdjieff. We have a great guy, Antti, in the Northlands. I think he's from Finland. He does lots of books, reviews on anthroposophy for us, and he's in the know there, so he gets them sent to him. And I do review books on Gurdjieff, and Tim obviously does books on theosophy. So he doesn't review his own books, because you said about the Book of the Dead, we did get somebody else to review that.
Yeah, fair enough. Now
so we're just trying to be supportive to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and help independent creators, publishers, small publishing houses, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's a great thing. One of the things that interests me is how, because I think it's fair to say that the occult, esoterica, it's quite a fringe sort of area of interest. If you poll 100 people in family fortune style.
Our survey says.
How many? What sort of percent of the general population spends the time reading books on anthroposophy? I'm guessing it's pretty low. So I'm always interested in people's sort of individual stories, how they sort of got into this. So maybe you could tell us a bit about what what your journey was into the esoteric realm.
Well, I actually, from a child, was very drawn into this kind of thing. I'm not saying I was anything special, but I just saw from a young age that things weren't quite right. I noticed that parents lied a lot, adults lied a lot, teachers lied a lot, and that kind of drove me to thinking, is this how the world should be? And then as a child, I loved books. I read books all the time, and I always seemed to have books that had a kind of a magical theme to them. I grew up on things like the Moomins, for those that know the Moomins, and that's quite, if you read them, they've got a philosophical way of life, but obviously written by a lady who understands the fantasy side of the world. And I grew up on things like Lord of the Rings and things like that, which also kind of give you a idea of magic. And so coming from a young age of thinking the world's not quite right, I was kind of looking for ways of trying to make it right for me. And I wouldn't say I dabble in magic or anything, but I'm very interested in the history of magic and whether it actually does work. I don't know. But that then led me on to, as I became a teenager, I started looking into the philosophy of what magic is and the reasons behind it. And I learned all about how to develop your will. And then that led on to things like theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, and her book, The Secret Doctrine and Isis Unvowed. And it made me suddenly realize there's a lot more going on into this world than the reality they want us to know. There's like a hidden thing behind it. And you were saying about it being the occult, being quite fringe. I think the occult's becoming more, well, no longer a cult. I think it's becoming more widespread and is being put out there because of these writers like Blavatsky and Gurdjieff and Rudolf Steiner and Nicholas Roerich, because people need to wake up. We feel like we're on a bit of a pivot point at the moment with what's going on with humanity. Yeah. And maybe that's why these things have started coming out into this realm. I think in the olden times, all this was hidden in mystery schools. And it's not magic, you go and cast a spell, but it's magic in that you can learn how to develop yourself and your inner self. And I wonder if 100 people would know a bit more if you did your survey. Mm-hmm. Especially with all the types of TV programs that are out there these days, these fantasy fiction programs. I think that gives people a little dabble in it. Maybe the people that don't watch them kind of programs, they wouldn't be interested in this kind of thing. But I think people don't know where to look for it or where to find it. And that was another reason we started Hermes Risen, to help people find paths, books, teachers, other ways of learning about what the esoteric is. And I had what they call a book angel. Whenever I liked a subject and wanted to learn more about it, a book would come my way, whether it was by the library or in a secondhand bookshop or someone lent it to me. So I felt like I was being helped. And then that comes back again to, is there something else going on? Are there beings out there that want to help people, that want to develop themselves and not be caught up in the rat race and the material world, and that are aware that there's something occultish going on? Hidden behind the veil.
Yeah, it's. I'd consider it sort of more philosophy than anything else, and I guess theology as well, because we're talking about other sort of realms of existence a lot of the time. And I remember Tim when he was saying, he was talking about theosophy. If it was implemented on a mass scale, you would have this sort of sea change in the way we interact with each other, because all of a sudden there are repercussions for how you conduct yourself, which is, it makes me wonder. You mentioned Blavatsky and Steiner, and there was this sort of explosion in I guess it was the late 19th century in theosophy and these sort of areas. And I always wonder, was that a result of the materialism from the Enlightenment a couple of 100 years earlier, where we sort of gradually went down this sort of materialistic thing and the death of God? I know it's a bit later, like Nietzsche and whatnot, but whether that was a reaction to the Enlightenment, that sort of explosion with Blavatsky et al.
I think so. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's something I say to people. I think the Enlightenment at the time was probably fantastic, but it's not the enlightenment of a spiritual enlightenment, was it? It was an enlightenment into materialism and industrialism, and that we don't need a spiritual path because we're just going to go and do it, blaze our way forwards ourselves, but forgetting our connection to the divine, and also forgetting our connection to this beautiful planet Earth, because it brought on all the industrial revolution and things like that, didn't it? Which again hasn't helped our planet, hasn't really helped a lot of people's lives. Industry has caused a lot of problems in pollution and such like, so that's having health crises, even though they deny all that. And I think that's why, because you're right, it was all at the same sort of time in the last quarter of the 1800s. Suddenly these people came out like Blavatsky, Steiner. I think there was a few groups beforehand, but maybe they were still trying to be secret and a bit of a mystery school type of thing. But Blavatsky definitely brought it into the fore. And then Steiner was part of Blavatsky and theosophy, and he broke away and started anthroposophy. But I believe they were all led by masters or Mahatmas or whatever you want to do, because call them, who came from some, like Blavatsky calls it the White Brotherhood, came to help humanity get back on track. And from a Gurdjieff point of view, he says that humanity is on this pivot point where it could either devolve, go downhill, and that we are devolving, and this is our chance to start evolving again. And I think Blavatsky and Steiner definitely also says the same thing. Humanity has become too secular, too materialistic, and has forgotten what it is, that we're spiritual beings in a human body, and we should be working with the hierarchies of the angels, archangels, God, and God up to the divine source.
It's interesting you say that, Debbie. Do you think the materialists potentially also tap into this supernature level? I imagine it as a, you know, if it's there as a blanket, so it covers nature and has its own subtle, you know, good and bad parts. And you mentioned, or you were framing it then, that the materialists are almost soulless, not spiritual at all. But is it possible that they're tapping into a different aspect of this spiritualism for their own personal gains? And I know we've seen that in the past. You mentioned Crowley, potentially, and some others. We've spoken about some of the secret societies in high politic in, you know, across the world, and whether there's shady dealings going on there. I don't know. I mean, do you think there's a place for that as well?
Absolutely. I think it's kind of like, because we were talking about Star Wars and Darth Vader before then. It's like the Force, and it could be used for good or bad. I think there probably are some materialists and scientists that want to use it for good things, and are probably being influenced by, let's say, the good beings, the good entities, like Nikola Tesla. He was in touch with something. He even used to say about how he used to get his visions. He'd have a light flashing in his head, and then suddenly the invention or whatever came to him. And he wanted to work with the earth. He loved his animals and his beasts, and he wanted to do it so that it helped humanity. He wanted to give technology for free, didn't he? Set out electricity and stuff like that. He didn't think it should be shared.
That's a terrible idea. Free energy. Oh, no.
And then I think there's the dark side of those that have seen how they can make money from it and control people. And I do wonder if they're maybe not possessed by dark forces, but they've possibly been, I think they're being whispered in their ears. I do strongly believe that. I do think there's a set of beings out there that are trying their best to bring mankind down. I actually give workshops on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, or Thoth, depending on how you like to call him. I don't know if you've read them books. And he talks about how there's beings that wear like glamours. They're serpent-like beings, dark forces that make their way up to the top of the human hierarchy and take control of us because they want to destroy us. They want to capture our souls. Gosh. Want to stop us returning to the divine. That's the dark forces mission. And what better way than keeping us trapped on this earth, looking at a phone or an iPad and not being concerned about anything else, hypnotizing us. It's all mass hypnosis.
Just apologies to our viewers who are using iPads and no. Just kidding.
Well, they can be used for good things as well.
Yeah,
like what I was saying about the force. You can use it for the good force. You can use it for the dark force. So you're a Sith or a Jedi. I'd like to think we're all Jedis.
Can't all be Jedis, Debbie.
No.
I'm sure there's some dark Sith watching your shows. Or dark Sith, isn't it?
Oh, you should see some comments we get. You mentioned Gurdjieff before, and that was part of the reason I wanted to talk to you, because I know you study this guy a lot. So let's go to back to the basics. I know literally nothing about this guy. I've read some ouspensky, but I've not been brave enough yet to tackle Gurdjieff. So could you start giving us a bit of background about him?
Yeah, well, we don't actually know when he was born. He was very cagey about his date of birth.
Oh, he wasn't like Flamel, was he?
Well, it's weird because a lot of these people don't want to give their true dates of births out. I think they're concerned about people doing charts on them or trying to use, because if somebody knows your astrological chart, they can work magic on it. So some say he was born in 1866, and then there's other dates for the 1870s. but he was he would have been born in what is now known as Armenia. And again, from a young age, he also saw that things were not quite right. And he had a father who used to be a singer, used to sing the old stories from the past. You know, they didn't read from books or anything. They were memorized and passed down to people. And one of his awakening moments was his father used to sing the Epic of Gilgamesh. And the actual Epic of Gilgamesh hadn't been discovered then, like the tablets that we know about. They weren't discovered for about another, I think that was the early 1900s. And he was stunned, Gurdjieff was, when he, you know, was obviously a man by then, to when they were released, the translations, these were almost identical to what his father had been singing in the past. So he could see that, you know, this tradition was carrying on. So he was wondering what other traditions there were, what other ancient traditions, the ancient wisdom. And he, from a young age, was trying to learn about spiritualism, taught himself hypnosis. He worked with various priests and had fantastic teachers. His second book, Meetings with Remarkable Men, describes all his biography of the different teachers he had that helped him, what he would call, wake up to what's going on in this world. You know, most of us walk about like robots and quite asleep. And so that's what got him going along. But he did his late teens and 20 years, in his 20s, they're quite, not much is known about them. There's no actual evidence of anything that he claims that he did. Like he started a group called the Seekers of Truth that went out looking for ancient wisdom. And in one of the places, this is all around the Middle East and around the Russian area, he came across, at a priest's house that he was staying at once, he came across a map that was pre-sand Egypt. So he went off looking for all this that was written on this pre-sand Egypt. He realized there were books, ancient books that were discussed that had never been found. So these guys were going to look for the Seekers of Truth, and they were going to look for mystery schools because they realized there was just more to life than being caught up in the materialism and being hypnotized by our governments and such like. He wanted to break free from all that and find a mystery school and develop himself. He did find one called the Samun Brotherhood, though he again is quite cagey about where exactly it was. So some of us think it might have been around the Kush mountain region, and it was whilst he was there.
Where's that? Is that Kush sort of like south of Egypt, like the ancient Kush?
I think it's sort of more Russia, Tibet, India areas.
Oh, right. Okay.
And he did go to Tibet. He traveled to all them kinds of places. He talks about them in his books, met various other teachers, but it was at the Samun Brotherhood that he got the teaching that he brought to the West, because they were telling him that people needed to know this, because, as I was saying earlier, humanity was de-evolving and going down the wrong path and not developing themselves. So he learned all these ancient dances, he learned all the ancient music from these different cultures of the past. And with that wisdom, after he'd had all his training at the Samun Brotherhood, he came back to the West and started his group, which most people know it as the Fourth Way. And do you know about what the Fourth Way is?
I read Ouspensky's book a year or two ago, but I mean, a lot of people listening probably don't. So maybe I was just going to ask before we get into the philosophy, because you mentioned him sort of reading a lot and traveling a lot. Did he have quite an affluent background in Armenia then? Or do we know? Do we even know?
We don't really know. He was he picked things up quickly. He learned other languages, right. And he loved to read. He mentions that he was always scouring for books and things, and then these books would lead to other books, like we'd have today when we read books. Like if you're reading the Fourth Way, at the back there's a nice bibliography maybe. So I remember you talking about reading the Fourth Way on one of your shows, and I think that's one of the most difficult books of Ouspensky.
I have honestly, I hated it. It was a war of attrition. An absolute war of attrition. I had to drag myself through it. I found it long-winded, repetitive, and I thought there was some moments of brilliance interspersed throughout it all. I know some people absolutely rave about it and say it's the best thing ever, but I don't know. Maybe they're talking about Gurdjieff's fourth way rather than Ouspensky's. Because Ouspensky was like Gurdjieff's acolyte, his a disciple, if you like, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's one of them. He was because I think he's In Search of the Miraculous is the book to read, really, out of Ouspensky's books, if you want to know about Gurdjieff's work. Ouspensky met Gurdjieff in about the early 1900, like about 1912 it was. But some reports say that Gurdjieff was actually looking for Ouspensky because Ouspensky brought out the book, I'm probably going to butcher this, Totalum Organum, which is another quite difficult book to read, but it's all about his understanding of the fourth dimension and the different philosophies, but the mystical philosophies, and his search for, because Ouspensky went out searching for teachers. He went to India and Egypt and places like that. And Gurdjieff actually said to Ouspensky, if you actually understood what you'd written, I'd be bowing down to you and listening to you. So I find that quite weird, because Ouspensky came from an intellectual point of view. So maybe he didn't quite take it all in and ponder on it. Instead, he just wrote what he knew, because he was a journalist, wasn't he? So I'm not saying his book was an article, but he didn't think with all his centers, which is what Gurdjieff was trying to teach us all to use: our intellectual center, our emotional center, and our moving center. And he said that Ouspensky was coming, because he was coming from the intellectual center, that's why he didn't always understand the Gurdjieff work. And Ouspensky came to him, like I say, about 1912, and he'd heard about Gurdjieff's play, the Dance of the Magicians, which was all about Gurdjieff was going to put on this play about the black magicians and the white magicians, but whether it was ever performed, the scenario of the ballet of the magicians, I should say. And he was trying to search out who this author was, where at the same time Gurdjieff was looking for him. And I think Gurdjieff sent someone to Ouspensky to bring Ouspensky to him. But when you met Gurdjieff, he used to put on a bit of a mask to see what he could get away with. And when Ouspensky met him, he was sitting there like some kind of Middle Eastern guru with a turban on, and apparently he had what looked like fake tan on, and he was pretending he couldn't understand Ouspensky. But then when he saw that Ouspensky kept persisting with questions, he realized that Ouspensky was a true teacher. And I think Gurdjieff put these masks on when he first met people to see whether they really are proper truth seekers, or if there's someone that's just going to waste his time and are just looking for easy fixes to fix their lives. Or, I meet many people that say to me, can you explain the Gurdjieff work in 3 sentences? He was trying to cut them kind of people away and just make sure it was people that would definitely put effort into doing this work to develop themselves. He didn't want time wasters.
Almost like an initiation.
Yes. Yeah. And I know Gurdjieff groups, I'm not going to mention any, that still do them kind of things and make people come and meet them, and then they don't turn up at them. They want to see how dedicated people are, which I think that's Gurdjieff's way, but not necessarily something we should be doing to people.
I'd heard he was a bit of a cad, Gurdjieff. When you think of these sort of spiritual leaders from the past, we think of sort of serene, meditating, like me, Ben.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Yep.
But I heard he was a bit of a wild one, Gurdjieff.
Yes, he was, and he wanted to see what people were really like. So there's all this talk about he used to like to get people drunk, because he says when you're drunk, your personality comes out and he sees who you really are as a personality.
Wow.
But deep down, he knows we've got an essence inside ourselves, which is our true self. And that's what he was doing the work to try and bring that out. But he was a bit of a cad. He was also a bit of a ladies' man, but he wasn't. I know they say about a lot of gurus, they slept with every woman in the center. But I know people who are sons and daughters of people that are of women that either slept with Gurdjieff or grew up in the Gurdjieff work. And Gurdjieff, because he understood women, he knew when a woman wanted a bit of fun, let's say, that night. And he also knew when another woman was just there to learn. All gurus have followers that would do anything for them and would sleep with them or whatever. But there was also agreements with some women because they wanted children. And obviously it would help him to have more children out there to pass on the work. So this is why he gets a bit of a reputation as a cad, because he also can be he was known for shouting at people, but he was trying to bring out of them the feelings that they would feel to make them aware of themselves, because all part of the Gurdjieff work is looking at yourself and seeing who you are and how you react to things. And he was trying to teach people how to stop reacting and start acting and be aware of why you act like this or react like this.
That's interesting, because like the fourth way is about, well, what I took from it is about analysing your behaviour, a lot of it. And so by shouting at people and carrying on, he was essentially testing them and giving them opportunities to practice the philosophy.
Yes, treading on corns, he used to call it.
What a rotter.
But it helps you to, like, if you do this kind of work, to see how you react to people in this life. Because he didn't come to say, I'm here to take you off to a retreat and you're going to live here forever and we're going to have our own community. He was wanting to teach people how to live in this world, in this, what he called a lunatic asylum. Because it is a lunatic asylum, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got governments that are corrupt. There's injustices everywhere. We don't live logically. We have homeless on the streets, and we could go on and on and on about that. So it's a lunatic asylum, and it's how to navigate our way through it, because many people that come to this work or any kind of spiritual path is because they see the world is unfair. The world we're living in, the life we have. So he was teaching us how to, like I say, navigate our way through it. But at the same time, we have to look at ourselves. Like all the old mystery schools of the past had across the doorway, as you went in, know thyself.
Yeah.
And that's what he was trying to teach people to do, look at themselves. And that's why it's very hard work, because people start doing this work, start looking at their dark side or their bad side, or the things that, we all have the things when we go to bed at night of like, oh my God, that's just come back into my head and, stirs up all your emotions. But he's trying to teach us of how to deal with that. And then as we learn to deal with that, we learn to deal with it in our everyday lives. It's not a quick fix solution. It takes a lot of effort and working, and people don't like looking at themselves at all, which is why many people abandon this path. But it is a very, if you persevere on it, it's a very rewarding path. And I can know from myself, if I look back at myself of 10 years ago, I'm definitely a different person in a much better way. So I still have my faults.
Yeah.
And if I look back at myself of 20 years ago, I can't even believe that who I was 20 years ago. But that's from doing the exercises he talks about in his books and in the books that are written by his students. I cannot deny they have helped me. And I could say the same for the Steiner writings and lectures and even Blavatsky. But it is self-work.
Yeah. Maybe you should give us some examples of this sort of work and how we can implement it, according to Gurdjieff.
Well, he says we need to start looking at ourselves of the way we think, the way we feel. Do we let our emotions override us? They're quick, our emotions, aren't they? Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly you're happy, suddenly you're sad. And he does this little anecdote about how a man gets up in the morning and his servant or his butler hasn't bought his cup of tea and his newspaper, so he's a bit, what a great start to the day. And then he goes to have his breakfast and he knocks something over. He's like, and he goes up to the bathroom and he's feeling himself getting more and more annoyed because he's not looking at what's annoyed him. He's just like, everything's going wrong. Tries to brush his hair, drops the brush, picks it up, brushes the hair again, drops the brush again. He's like, So this gentleman goes off down the street and suddenly sees a beautiful woman who gives him a lovely smile, and everything in him changes. And this is all reactions, and it's teaching us why these things happen to us. Like if you've been working on yourself, you'd be like, when that butler didn't bring that newspaper up, you'd think, right, why did that butler not bring the newspaper up? Why am I letting this annoy me? Incidents happen. You keep dropping the brush. Well, I'm obviously, because I'm all nervous or anxious or angry, so I need to collect myself and gather myself together. And seeing like this beautiful woman give him a wave and a smile because it's made him feel better because something nice has happened to him. Well, we need to be aware of this is happening to us throughout our days, why these things happen to us. And we hold on to so much baggage from the past, as we all know. I'm sure many of you have done this kind of thing before. having to not necessarily let it go, but look at why things still irk us, why things from the past that suddenly come up are still, traumatizing us. So it's making us look at ourselves, which is why sometimes when we look at the trauma we've had in our lives, we want to blame other people, but we also need to look at what our involvement in it is. So this is the kind of exercises that you're doing with yourself, but you're also trying to learn how to think instead of react, like think clearly. When you're feeling your emotions, what is that emotion? Why am I feeling that anger? Why am I feeling, or if it's something nice happening, why am I going too ecstatic over it? And also our bodies. He does work on our bodies. So it's 3 centers: your mind, your emotion, and your body. Are you tense? Are you relaxed? Being tense, we don't work properly because we're holding tension in our bodies, so the energies aren't flowing through properly. So he does all these exercises on things like that. And the main aim is to try and bring these 3 centers, your intellectual, your emotional, and your moving body, into alignment so that you can become a more harmonized person. And then when you become harmonized in yourself, you go out into the world and hopefully spread more harmony. But at the same time, you become more aware of things happening to you, because you, like, say that person, somebody rides in front of you and cuts you off. Because you're harmonized, you know it's just an incident. It wasn't done personally against you. It's just someone else who was asleep getting in your way, but you don't react to it. Instead, you just understand why that's happened. But like I say, we react so quickly that it takes a lot of work of dealing with this. But over time, thinking about this kind of thing and pondering on it, it does start working inside us.
Yeah, you literally have a split second, don't you, where you have a chance to stop yourself and just pause. And if I've done this, I've got 2 kids, and nothing will try your patience like kids. And we all know it. We all know, and it's almost the urge to overreact. It's almost, oh my gosh, almost intoxicating. It's almost like an addiction. It's like, oh gosh, it's going to feel so good sometimes. Just take off, shout or bang a table or stomp off. And hopefully if you're practicing this sort of stuff, you realize pretty soon, like, this just does not work. It does nothing good. But it's so tempting, isn't it?
Just wastes energy. And also, like when you were saying about that reaction, that build-up, that's the build-up from all the past. Everything's piling up on it from everything that's happened to you in your life. Because he talks about we waste so much energy. Losing our temper takes a lot of energy out of us. He says we have these accumulators in us where our energy stores are, and they are running down as we waste energy. Like when you have an explosion like that, we have to think of it like a factory's exploded, and then they have to send in the men to go and clean it all up, and reset the factory. Well, that takes a couple of days. Well, that's the same for us. When we have an explosion, our whole body, our mind, our emotions are all affected, and it takes a while to reset yourselves and then get back on track. We get shaken, don't we, when something bad happens to us?
Yeah.
And he's trying to teach us how to use our energies in a more productive way. And if we're more harmonized, we're not wasting energy. Instead, we're creating a better vibration, a better energy, a more purer energy.
So I'm guessing that would be sort of the main drive of the emotional center. What about the intellectual center? What does it tell us to do in that regard to sort of harmonize our intellect?
Well, that's thinking, isn't it? Because the way we think, sometimes we start, I suppose, imagining, like, let's say with your kids, you start thinking, oh, he's going to do it again. He's going to do it again. So we're making that plan in our head that it's going to happen again, instead of thinking, right, that incident's happened. And instead of winding ourselves up that it's going to keep on happening, obviously you need to, you're learning to talk to your child, explain to your child why what he or she's done is wrong. But at the same time, you've got to hold yourself back from seeing how everything's built up over time. You're kind of looking at your thinking process of, why am I letting it get to me?
Yeah.
Why is this winding me up? It's a kind of a control thing with thinking, isn't it? We want to feel like we're in control of our minds, but We're not. Our minds work quickly.
Yeah,
And
he talks about you sort of drifting off. You're not aware. He's always, I can't remember the sentence that keeps getting repeated through the book, but it's sort of focusing back in on yourself. And it's like fantasizing or daydreaming, something all of us do all the time. And you can just catch yourself doing it. You think, what am I doing? I'm thinking about something, some fake thing in my mind. I'm completely lost. I'm out of touch with reality. Anything could be happening around me. I'm just lost in my own thoughts, you know.
yeah, we make these scenarios and they waste so much energy. We assume we know what's going to happen in the future and we have all these fears and things, and we have to stop that and be aware of the moment and the now. And he talks about once we start thinking about this kind of thing, we have different eyes inside of us. You know, you've got when you go to work, your work feel, and when you go to play with your children, your daddy feel, or, you know, do you know what I mean? When you go to be with your family, you've got a different head on. When you go to be out social down the pub with your friends, that's another version of you.
Yeah.
So there's all these different versions of you all trying to get your attention. And that again is part of the like separating us from what we should really be doing, of making aware of who we are. All these different eyes in us, you know, all trying to get attention. He talks about it with a horse and carriage scenario. I can't remember if that's in the Fourth Way book or not, about the horse and carriage. So you visualize a horse and a carriage. So the horse is your emotions. The carriage is your body, your physical body, representative, obviously. And the driver of the carriage, who sits on top, who clicks the horses forward, that's your mind. And the horse needs to be looked after. It needs to be careful. It needs to be fed properly, things like that. So your emotions don't get out of control. You know, horses can get quite wild. If they're not looked after, they slow down and fall over and things, you know, stumble as they're going along. If the carriage wheels aren't oiled, which is the physical body, you're not maintaining the manufacture of it to keep it rolling along and working well. And up the top is that man, that driver, just thinking, right, off we go. But these are all different versions of yourself. And what you need in that carriage, somebody gets in. It's like a taxi, isn't it? Somebody gets in and says, right, you take me there. Well, that's your different eyes driving that carriage. You know, like when you're going down the pub version of yourself is getting in that carriage and off you go. But if you don't look after your carriage, your horse, and the man driving the car, which is your three centers, you're going to be all over the place. You're not harmonized. You're a bit lopsided. He says we work from one center at a time, when really we should be working from all three centers. I don't know if I explained that horse and carriage analogy properly, but the person getting into the carriage is always changing, the different versions of yourself. And Gurdjieff's work is trying to make you find the real you that's inside you, the essence, which is being bogged down as we grow up by all our developments, our personalities being developed over, you know, from our peers, from our schooling, from our friends. Our personality takes over our essence. When we're born, we have this essence in us. It's why babies are so delightful, aren't they? They're so happy. I know they need feeding and changing still, but it's their essence is shining through them. But as they start being manipulated, I don't know if that's the right word, and look, you know, by their parents and such like, then they start creating different versions of themselves inside to work with their parents or to please their school, or I don't know, rebel against their school and things like that. And so your essence gets squashed down further and further and further, while these different versions of yourself, they're like masks, come out for different events and different situations. And this Gurdjieff work is all about bringing into control, well, not maybe in control, but under control, all these different eyes in you, so that the real you can come through and you can see who you really are. It's quite a revealing thing, a revelation once it does happen. But whether you stay in it is very difficult. Not many people are able to bring their true essence out. But I don't say that to discourage people. People need to, if they want to develop themselves and find who they really are, this is the kind of exercises that would be perfect for that.
And it's a while since I read it, so I can't remember now. But from what I remember, the idea isn't, you're not trying to eliminate these separate eyes? Are you trying to integrate them into a whole? Is that the idea?
Yes, and make them more aware as you're doing this work, kind of like a training for them to stop reacting and start acting. They will start learning how to be real. Gurdjieff's last book, its title is called Life is Real, Only Then When I Am. While we're all asleep, being mechanical and letting these different personalities overtake us, we're kind of just letting life happen to us. Though most people will say, no, I know what I'm doing with my life. I'm getting on with my life. But deep down, we all know we don't have control of our lives. But he says, by doing this kind of work, we will wake up properly, as in like an enlightenment way, and see what life is all about. It is a bit of a shock because you suddenly see I'm stuck in this lunatic asylum. But if you're developed enough, you learn how to negotiate your way through it, and hopefully become a teacher or something to pass this on to other people to help them wake up. I know many people call this a prison planet for various reasons, but in a way it is a prison planet in that none of us are free to do what we want. We're all caught up in the rat race, aren't we?
Yeah. Someone in the chat not long ago was asking about this book, the Beelzebub book. Which one was that?
Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. So this is like his magnus opus. Right. And this is when I first read it, it was like a science fiction book for me. But it actually its proper title is All and Everything. So Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. This is Gurdjieff talking about how we got into this mess, how us humans have ended up stuck like this. It's like we've forgotten what our purpose on this planet is. And he writes all about this cosmology. He calls God his endlessness. So I'll just quickly go over the cosmology. His endlessness is obviously the God living in his Sun Absolute, that's the heaven. And he's created this universe because time, which is the enemy, started eating away at his heaven. So he needed a universe, a cosmology, to distract time, to keep his heaven going. And so because of that, all the planets were made, and our little Earth was one of the last to be made, and us humans were put on it. And we were supposed to help with what they call the harmonious construction of the universe. Everything affects everything. I'm sure you've heard of the saying, everything eats everything. Well, in this, everything works on everything. What's happening on Mars is helping that solar system. Our planet should be helping the solar system, and then that helps like the next solar system that goes on up to the to God. And what happened on our planet was there was a mistake in the creation of our planet. So with us little humans, we had to be distracted while the angels came down to fix the Earth, and they gave us what Gurdjieff calls the Kunda buffer. And you have in your titles, you always have They Live with the man, I've forgotten the name, with the black sunglasses on.
Yeah, Rowdy Roddy Piper.
It's like they've given them the sunglasses to distract us, not to let us see. And them sunglasses have kept us away from what's really going on in this world. Though they came back and took the sunglasses off us. There really was a towel, Gurdjieff's book, but I'm just doing it from a bit of a different analogy. The sunglasses were removed, but we'd had such a great time being free of being caught up in the cosmic hierarchy that we wanted to continue that way. And that's why people forgot about the spiritual connection.
I'll just eat the snake. I'll eat the steak. It's, like that guy in the Matrix said.
Yeah, keep me
here.
I'll have the steak, thanks.
That's the one. So, but where Beelzebub comes in is Beelzebub. Obviously, many people know of him from the Bible. He's another name for one of the fallen angels or the demons. Well, he, in Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, he has caused a problem, and he's been exiled to our solar system. And he was exiled sort of at the beginning of humanity. And throughout the book of Beelzebub's Tale, which is big, it's a big book, he's watching humanity develop. And every now and then he comes down and comes to see what we're up to. And really it's about how we can develop ourselves, how Beelzebub develops himself and gets himself redeemed, and how we should be getting back on track of working as part of the job we were given to do. Not to live here, even though we have free will, we should be still enjoying, because once we're, this awakening that Gurdjieff talks about, we want to work with God or the divine source. But as you say, many people just want to go and eat the steak.
Yeah. So
and then they get caught up in the recycling system and keep coming back on this earth.
So was this cosmology, is this a fictitious cosmology he's come up with, or was this his personal belief? Or do we even know? I
don't think we know, though. I think a lot of it is obviously he's taken it from the mystery schools he attended, and then has written it, fabricated it out a bit more for the book. But I think all the ancient wisdoms, whichever path you follow, they're talking about getting on track and being in touch with, whether it's your higher self, your higher angel, or the divine. It's all a spiritual workings, where the dark forces would want to take us away from all that. And so they will do everything and throw materialism at us. They'll tell us that, people that follow spiritual paths are crazy, should be locked away. We don't understand because we're living in a rational world. So you can see how the dark forces are trying to distract people from what we should be doing, working on this planet. And part of Gurdjieff's cosmology is that this Earth is also developing. Every planet develops, and in the future, this planet will develop into a sun. But to do that, it needs all our vibrations, which are, what we put out, all our moods, all our, what we say, everything's going out into the atmosphere and then going into the earth to help it develop. And at the moment, with all that's going on, it's not a lot of goodness going in there. It's a lot of, especially with the state of what's been happening in the last few years, all the fear that was created, all them kind of things, a neglect to God, a neglect to caring for other people, each for themselves. The planet might not develop into the sun. And also we might not develop into what we're next to be, the next stage of our evolution as humans, where I think the dark forces are trying to keep us trapped on this earth and not return to God. And what better way than keeping us hypnotized by the AI and the coming transhumanism and things like that.
Sort of artificial, you might call it an artificial human evolution, like Yuval Harari would talk about it. He's constantly going on about AI and how us useless eaters are going to develop over the next 50 years, whereas I'm guessing Gurdjieff was talking more about a sort of a spiritual evolution for humanity.
Yeah, not just for humanity, but for the earth.
Right.
The moon's developing. The moon will at some point become a planet like the earth, but that is also getting our vibrations, and it's us, we here on earth, and all the animals are helping that create that. It's like when you're making a pie, all the ingredients that are going into it. Well, we're the ingredients, but it's through our vibrations and our energy that we're putting into it.
What was his did he talk about sort of eternal recurrence, reincarnation, anything like that?
He does. He talks about, though that is also more Ouspensky, because Ouspensky talks about recurrence, so that we keep, though he says we keep coming back to the same life. So when you die, you'll come back and be Ben, and you'll be Phil again, and relive this life. And
we've got to
fix it and make it better every time. And I quite like that idea. That actually originally comes from Nietzsche, where Gurdjieff seems to be saying more of, you'll come back in the reincarnation cycle in the future. But part of Gurdjieff's work and these exercises that he does, and so this is the more of the deeper stuff when you've really been working on the exercises, is you're learning to develop your, what he calls your Kesdjan body. Some people think of it as an astral body.
Sorry, what's that called?
Called a Kesdjan, Kesdjan. And he has a lot of terminology and philology, as they say. He thinks that words are very important to get precise, and he thinks another problem with all our languages now is that we have many meanings to words. For example, the word cancel. We can have a cancel of people, or you can cancel somebody as in talking to a person one-to-one. And so he was trying to get exact words so that people could understand what he was saying. So with this Kesjan body, this is something we can learn to develop in ourselves while we're still living. It will help us with our astral traveling, if we want to do that. But it will also help us when we die. If we've developed our soul will go into that Kesjan body and not get caught up in the reincarnation cycle. It will go on to the next stage. But people that aren't working on themselves will end up in the reincarnation cycle again and come back round, or in the recurrence if you're ouspensky, and do your life again until you get it right. I don't know which I prefer. Do I want to come back and do this life again, or do I want another chance somewhere else? What if I don't have the opportunities I had this time to develop myself? If I came back in another family, in another life in the future, which is why Gurdjieff says it's really important to do this work now, when you've got the books there for you to tell you, or his teachings to show you how to get out of this. Because he talks about we have 7 bodies. And this is also from the ancient Egyptians and quite a few other places. I'm sure because you've talked about ancient Egypt before.
Yeah, it's a magic number as well, isn't it? 7.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got our car body, our bar body, our ak body, and these are all to help you develop your soul. And I think I definitely believe this is what Gurdjieff is saying. This whole thing this whole planet is to help you develop your soul. It's like a soul school. And we're all born with a germ of a soul, he says. We've all got this germ of a soul in us. But it's how we develop from childhood into teenage years, whether that soul develops. And I'm sure you've met many people that are soulless. And I'm sorry to say I've met many people that are soulless, which has probably been through their upbringing and things. But they can get their soul back. They can work on it because it's still a germ in them. And so we want to develop our soul to kind of develop it so we can escape and go into the next part of whatever evolution is.
A lot of the particularly Eastern mysticisms, they talk about detachment, especially on the physical plane, that you've got to sort of detach yourself from your belongings, especially Buddhism. It's kind of terrifying and off-putting for Westerners like me to sort of give up. Like, how can you be detached from your kids? Your kids are everything. They're your whole reason for living. They're the center of your world. I mean, that's just a complete roadblock for me. What does Gurdjieff say about things like detachment?
Well, he definitely poo-poos detaching yourself from your family. He says family is the most important thing. You have the opportunity to bring up children in the best possible way, he says families, he was so important to one. I think it's more, for him, it's not necessarily detachment from material things, but it's, he did say that he's brought the East to the West and he's trying to bring the two together. So there are things in the East he agrees with. He didn't really do meditations, but he did do what they call sit-ins, where you would sit first thing in the morning, preferably as the sun's rising, and feel your body. Concentrate on perhaps your legs first, then your arms, then your torso, then your head. Connect with yourself. But he didn't mean go and find an empty, try and find mindfulness or switch off from things. It wasn't that kind of meditation. But for detachment I'd have to think about that, because
well, I'm thinking it
make it important. Sorry,
it's just come back to me. I mean, this is Ouspensky again, so I know it's not exactly the same guy, but very closely related. But I remember there's 3 modes that he discusses: the way of the fakir, the way of the monk, is it, and the way of the yogi.
Yeah, so you've got your 3 ways: your monk, fakir, yogi. So the monk's works on his emotions, he's praying, trying to connect with his God. Your fakir's working on, I sometimes get these, fakir's working on the body, you see them with their arms up and it's all withered and they've not let their arm down for 30 years.
Kind of ascetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then your yogi's working on his emotions, learning to, control his emotions so he can lie on a bed of nails or whatever, I suppose. And what Gurdjieff's 4th way is bringing the 3 of them together. So they're like the 3 centers I was saying about earlier: your intellect, which is the fakir, the monk, the emotions, and the yogi, the body. Or no, fakir is the body, yogi is the mind. But bringing them three together to make a fourth way. You need all them three in balance to become a balanced man. And he then says that people that start working on that, people that they become a fourth man, what's known as the fourth man or fourth woman. And you can work your way up to fifth, sixth, seventh. And
that was kind of intriguing about the book, because ouspensky is talking about, these sixth, seventh, and eighth men are probably completely hypothetical. No one's ever probably got there, and maybe there was a few allusions to sort of spiritual leaders of the past, like the big JC.
Yeah, maybe JC.
Maybe he was a long way up.
I believe they were number sevens, if I remember what I read in one of the teachers, one of the students of Gurdjieff said that. And people used to wonder if Gurdjieff was a number 7 man. I myself think he definitely wasn't a number 4. He was above that. He was a 5 or 6.
Oh, well, explain that, because sort of how shall I grade myself, Debbie? Am I, 2.5 maybe? what's like
barely?
What's the standard for the number system?
Well, I think anybody that's doing this kind of work, or even people that are doing shows like, because I don't know what you do for spiritual practices, but you're interested in this kind of thing, aren't you? Your shows that you've done over the few years I've seen are quite, not necessarily spiritually driven, but they're investigative, they're truth seeking, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Shows you're trying to do. That to me is man number 4. Your man number 1, like, let's say, I always forget which is mind, intellect. So that would be, one of those professors who always is very clever, but he's so absent-minded. That would be one, maybe man number 1. Man number 2, possibly a sports person, super physically fit, but maybe doesn't have their emotions and intellect very well to interact with the world unless they're concentrated on doing that sporting event. Man number 3, let's say, is the emotional one. That's probably a poet.
Actor.
Yeah, because they're putting all their emotions into everything, but they've still got the intellect. All 3 of them have still got a bit of intellect. It's all at degrees, but they're bringing man number 4, bringing the 3 together, or people I think that have realised that they want to look further than just being man number 1, number 2, or number 3.
Debbie, I practice qigong and tai chi. Do I get any extra points for that?
I do that too. So yes.
Excellent. Yes.
You're 4.5, Ben.
Nice.
I'll take that. So what's so you would say you would characterize, we're talking in broad strokes here, so you characterize a man man, we're talking, obviously we mean men and women.
Men and women, yeah.
A man number 4 is someone who's at least starting on the journey. Yes. So what would a man or woman number 5 look like then?
Well, I think to be man number 4, it's a real big path to get to number 5, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's like big path. Man number 1, number 2, number 3, little paths to develop to number 4, but you have to do so much work to get to number 5. I've met various people, I would say number 5 when I've been to Gurdjieff groups or conferences, because I can see people that have worked on themselves all their lives and have actually worked with people that were students of Gurdjieff. So the lineage has continued, so they've got a proper teaching, and I can see that they're more centered in themselves. They have time for people, they have time for themselves, they're not rushing around. You can see that they ponder about things, they have consideration, being kind, all the things that would be, nice if everybody was like it.
Does authenticity, would that play into it?
Absolutely. We're trying to be, authentic, as authentic as you can, because one of the things that will stop you in your spiritual path is lying to yourself, which is one of the main problems with working on yourselves. We don't want to admit that we can be a bit of a
shit
sometimes. Or, don't want to admit that we're a bit weak, but, you have to learn not to lie to yourself. So these kinds of people, you can feel it in their energy.
So our spiritual leaders up there, and what happened to the Dalai Lama when he started sucking tongues? Did he get knocked down a few levels?
God, trust you to bring
Personally,
that up.
I think he got taken over by dark forces a few years ago. But that, even before this last few years of a shit show, he was changing.
Mm.
You know, he used to be my hero, and I can't even remember what it was, but I think it was about 2018. He started saying things that I was like, "This ain't right." I don't know how to explain it, and I just had this feeling from watching him that he just didn't seem to be the same.
Mm.
So I do get concerned that these people could get taken over. And, you know, I watch a lot of conspiracy stuff. I'm concerned about cloning. I'm concerned about what dark forces could do. But that tongue sucking was a bit weird, even though they are trying to say, well, it's a Tibetan thing that they do out there. It's just a saying. But
I suppose that goes back to Gurdjieff in that, or it may have been the other guy, but in that when you're wandering around and you're focused on other things and you're not concentrating on the real you and all that sort of stuff. If you're a follower of these people and then they all of a sudden change or do something really super weird, it can be crushing if you're a serious acolyte.
Yeah.
well, that's the other thing. We mustn't put people on pedestals. You know, it was a lesson for me. I've just got to remember what the Dalai Lama used to teach is very valuable. What he used to do is very valuable. I don't really watch him now, so I don't know what he's doing or what he's up to. But, you know, his past work, very important. And people do make mistakes. Maybe he did make an error in judgment that day. But just definitely, I don't think people should put people on pedestals. But I do discover from people that come to me that are trying to learn things, they're looking for teachers all the time. People want to look up to someone. They don't have trust in themselves that they can do this work themselves. And I know Gurdjieff used to say, you need a teacher in the school. Well, that was 100 years ago. Times have changed. And we're going into the age of Aquarius, which is every man for himself. We've come out of the age of Pisces, which was the aeon of teachers. So we had JC, Buddha, Zoroaster, many others whose names slip my mind. But the teachings are all there for us. But people are still wanting someone to look up to. And that's a weakness in humanity, sadly.
I've not heard that before, Debbie. You mentioned the age of Pisces. We're talking about the grand year, the precession of the equinoxes here. So Pisces, the age of Pisces, the last 2,160 years roughly, being the age of teachers, and Aquarius being the age of, what was it? How did you describe
like the individual?
Oh, the individual.
I said each man for himself, or each woman for himself. But in a way, it's not because we're still in the age of Pisces, which is why everything's all.
We're on the cusp.
Because we're on the cusp, exactly. It's all changing. But I don't think any teachers will come in the age of Aquarius because the teachers have been, and we need to learn from them teachers that have given us everything we need to know.
What's the origin of that thinking that the age of the Aquarius is the age of the individual? Does that come from astrology or from symbology or somewhere else?
Yes.
It's an astrological connotation, is it?
Yeah, it was from someone that I did lots of astrological courses with a couple of different teachers in London back in. I know Diana was still alive, Princess Diana, because we did an astrological chart of her. And so she was still alive at this time. And that said on it, she will never be queen.
Gosh.
Yeah. That was a shocker for me. That she had, I'm pretty sure her and Charles had split up by then, but
it was 97 when she died.
Sorry?
It was 97 when she died.
Right, so I must have done these astrological courses in like the mid-90s. And it's something that one of the classes the teacher was all about. We did the aeons, and he was explaining about how, like, you see the age of Aquarius, the symbol is sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a woman, a water carrier.
Yeah.
So we've got the water, which is the age of Pisces. We've got the teachings is there. And the man or the woman has to carry it themselves
or
and drink from it. Drink from them waters and learn.
Often depicted as pouring it away, which is kind of a dark interpretation.
Which I think my astrologer friend, teacher told me, but it slipped my mind because I was too blown away about, there's no teachers come. Because I was waiting for a messiah back in them days. Wow. And he was explaining, you guys and girls are going to be the messiahs of yourselves, which is also what the Gurdjieff work's all about. You know, we need to develop ourselves.
Where are we on the procession then? How many more years before the transition?
Well, it depends on which astrologer you go with.
Yeah, where do you start counting?
Oh, I don't know.
It's,
But I feel we were on a cusp, like you were saying,
I
Phil.
think, I think if you go off the spring equinox or whatever it is, whatever the marking point is, I think we're sort of in between Pisces. It's to do with what constellation the sun's rising
Right.
in front of, I think, on the spring equinox. So I think we're somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
And my
But
friend went
middle
and
will be
looked at that
right.
last year. He went out on a boat and saw it, apparently. And he said it was still in Pisces, but it wasn't center Pisces. So
The thing is, like,
moving.
the constellations are different sizes. It's very strange. It's something I don't, I can't really talk about, because I think there's, sort of to divide the 360 degrees between the 12 signs. I'm not, I think it's very, personally, I get the impression that it's more symbolic than maybe most people, a lot of people
I know
think.
what you're saying, because also the planets moved, and the Western astrology is not in line with what the planets and stars are in the sky as we look at it.
Yeah.
Vedic astrology is, and this guy who went out and looked at the spring equinox last year, he's a Vedic astrologer. So they're saying we're still in the age of Pisces, but it is coming towards the end. But he can't. I was joking with him, saying, "Did you put a ruler up and count down the years?" And he was like, "No, you can't do it like that."
That's what I want. That's the answer I want.
Yeah,
I
that's
need.
what I want.
Well, Debbie, I've just looked at the time. We've blown over an hour already. I don't know where it's gone. Yeah. We're going to have to do this again, because there's so much we could talk to you about. It's great talking to someone who's sort of spent so much time. I imagine there's a million subjects we could talk to you about.
Absolutely, I'd love to do it again, because you guys, like I was saying before, I love your shows. I watch them anyway, so I'm always happy to come back.
Always nice to meet a fan, Debbie.
You're such a number. You're such a number 4. Yeah, you're such a number 4. Stop kidding yourself. Gosh, Debbie. All the links will be in the show notes. Is there anything or anywhere you want to point people to online?
Well, my latest book's out, Exorcising Witches, which is a fictional book about an exorcist who can see the demons that need exorcising. And my book, Monkey Mind, Robot Bodies, my fiction book about becoming transhumanism, has suddenly got popular again. So if people like reading and want to hear my theories and theologies of my books, please check my work out. I have a website.
Do you write non-fiction as well?
Only for Hermes Risen and
Right.
for perhaps other, if I speak at a conference or something. But that's about it, yeah.
Cool. Right. Well,
Debbie-Elliott.co.uk.
yeah, that's the website. Links are in the show notes, as ever. Hermes Risen online mag, and YouTube as well. You're on YouTube.
DJ Elliott,
Yeah, so drop a
but
sub
not
on
the
there.
DJ, music DJ.
Yeah, it's DJ Elliott, isn't it?
Yeah, there was only 2 of us when I started, and it was a DJ Elliott that does music, and then there was me.
Well, check it out. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Debbie. It's been wonderful to meet you.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
stay on the line for a minute while we play ourselves out. And you lot out in podcast land, we shall return very shortly for part 2. Do some funny, some news.
Funny.
I was going to say funny stuff. It's like, yeah, it is. It mainly is.
Funny, haha, funny, peculiar. Both.
Both, yeah, in equal measure, well integrated, like
Excellent.
a true man number 4 that I am.
That's-
Right, catch you on the flip side. So, ciao for now.
Bye.
Bye.